Okay, today we're going to talk about comparing fractions. Now that we've talked a lot about equivalent fractions and understanding what fractions might look like to us, let's see if we can compare some things. Now when we compare, we want to use some symbols. We want to use a greater than, a less than, or an equal to symbol. So that's what we're going to put inside of our circle here from 7/8 to 3/4. But to get there, we've got to do a few things. I've got some fraction strips down here so you can visually see the sizes of 7/8 and 3/4. Let's go ahead and get into it. We'll make the bottom fraction bar 3/4. How about the top 7/8? So up at the top, I'm looking at my denominator here, and 8. So that means I need to split this into 8 equal pieces. And I'm going to do my best to do 8. So I know that if I split it into 4, and then I cut those 4 equally in half, each one of those pieces, I should end with 8. So let's see how I did. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I do have 8 pieces. Now my top number, my numerator here, is going to tell me how many I should shade in, or how many I'm talking about, to give me an idea of the size of this fraction here. So I'm going to go ahead and shade 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and hopefully you're saying, no, you're not done yet. 6, and 7. So that would be 7/8. That's what it looks like. That's the size where that whole thing is shaded except one final piece. Now let's go over to the bottom fraction here, and let's go ahead and do 3/4. Well, if I split in half and then split the half in half, I'll have 4 total pieces. So that's 4 pieces. Remember, my denominator here tells me 4. Now I need to shade according to my fraction, and it says that I need to shade 3. So 1, 2, 3 pieces. Now I'm going to compare, and I'm going to look at this and notice right here, so if I was to compare, we have the equal amount here and here left over, but this part right here isn't shaded, and up top it is. So I know, right, just looking at this, that the top is going to give me the larger amount. So that tells me 7/8 is greater than 3/4. All right, let's try another example. Now I have 1/4 and 5/8, and I want to compare these. This would be a great time. Stop the video, quiz yourself, see how you do, see if you can split these, and I've kind of labeled them for you into 4ths and 8ths in these fraction strips. See if you know which is greater, less than, or equal to. Okay, now that you are back with us, let's go ahead and get into it. I have my 1/4. Split that here, here, here. Split that into 4 pieces. The bottom, split that into 8. Okay, I've now split that into 8 pieces and the top into 4. So let's do some shading. Okay, we had the first one is 1/4. So we have 1 of the 4. Wow, that's not a very big piece, is it? 1/4. Let's look at 5/8. I need to shade 1, 2, 3, 4. And I hope you're already seeing something about these. Once we got to that point, we already can tell which is greater. All right, so with that in mind, I think you could probably answer the top section, but just by looking at these fraction strips and knowing 1/4 is a fairly small fraction compared to 5/8. So 1/4 is less than 5/8. Okay, we'll give you one more example here. Again, stop the video, see how you do, and then come back to us and see, and you can kind of check your work, see if there was anything that you maybe misunderstood. Okay, now that we are back, let's look here. One thing I want to call your attention to on this problem is notice we have a 2 and a 3, 2/3. We have a 5 and 12. Your brain almost automatically wants to tell you that 5/12 is greater than. the 2/3. But don't always think that. Remember, in fractions, things can be a little different when you come down to the size of pieces. So let's get into it. Let's go ahead and do this to see where we end up. We have 2/3. We need to split this one in 3 pieces. Okay, I just split that one into 3 pieces. The bottom one we need to split into 12 pieces. Okay, let's get into this. I'm going to split it into 3 pieces, or excuse me, 6 pieces first, and then take all 6 of those and cut them in half. And that's going to give me 12. Just make sure I get 12 pieces. Okay, and then they're not exact, and that's okay. For our demonstration, we're just going to get fairly close to where we need to be. Now, I'm going to do some shading so we can do some comparing. 2/3, two of the 3 are going to be shaded in 2/3. Okay, it's 2/3. Now let's look at 5/12. We have 1, 2, 3. Oh, these are small pieces. 4, 5. Notice, I want to call your attention to something on this, where the middle would be, this would be 6. Oops, we don't want that big pen. Let's get a little different pen here, make it easier for you to see. We know that 6/12 is actually right in the half, is 1/2 of, if you split something into 12 pieces, 6 of those would be half of it. 5/12 is not even a half. Notice that the half line up at the top would be about here, and 2/3 is greater than a half. So it does help us to know some halves and things. So I know by looking at this and the number shaded, or the amount shaded, that 2/3 is greater than 5/12 just by drawing that picture out and seeing. It's actually quite a bit greater than 5/12. Okay, I have 2 examples here that I just kind of want to end the video with. Let's do 5/6 and compare it with 3/12. Notice on these two, and this isn't always going to be the case, but on these two, 12 is a multiple of 6. So with that in mind, I can kind of see if this is I can compare these when I change the 6th to a fraction, an equivalent fraction. Again, connecting what we've been learning with what we are doing now. And it will help me a lot more when I have the denominators, the number at the bottom, the same. So let's turn this 6 by multiplying by 2, the numerator and denominator by 2 up here. Let's turn this fraction into a fraction with the denominator equal to the other side. So 6 times 2 is going to be 12. 5 times 2 is going to be 10. Notice we have 3/12 over here, and 5/6 is equal to 10/12. So just by looking at 10/12 versus 3/12, when we have denominators that are exactly the same, it really makes it easy for us to compare. If I have 10 out of 12 pieces versus 3 out of 12, we know that is larger. So 5/6 is greater than 3/12. Well, let's go down to the bottom and see if we can do the same thing. And again, I also want you to realize it's not always going to be like this when you're comparing fractions, that they're multiples of each other, but sometimes they are. For example, 10 is a multiple of 5, so I can get a denominator that's equal to my denominator of 10 when I have a 5 in my other fraction. All I need to do here is double times 2 my numerator and denominator, because remember, the equivalent fraction rule tells us if we multiply numerator and denominator by the same number, or we can divide it, we would get an equivalent fraction. So 2 times 2 is 4. 5 times 2 is 10. So 4/10 is equivalent to 2/5. Those are the same. And now I can look at 4/12 and take a look at 2/10. I definitely know 4/10 would be more than 2/10. So with that in mind, 4/10 is greater, or 2/5 is greater than 2/10. All right, I want to end that video there on that spot, and Hopefully you have just a little bit better understanding of comparing fractions, what's going on there. And as always, it's a beautiful day in this neighborhood.